Thanks very much. It's so lovely to be here. First of all, I should probably start with two confessions. The first is that I'm not a conservationist. I'm a social anthropologist. So I'm possibly the person feeling most out of place. And the other is that this work really represents the work that I'm involved in to varying degrees. That's done by the centre that I work for. And that's the Centre for Anthropological Research up in Joburg. The nice thing about being an anthropologist is that you can be an anthropologist of anything. And so we have a really broad remit of work, ranging from everything from paleontology right up until evidence-informed policy or research for policy. And this is sort of where we fit in with systematic reviews. That is, we try to ensure that evidence is both used and useful. We try to ensure that evidence is used through the building capacity to use research evidence project that's hosted by CFAR, where members of this team work quite closely with policymakers in government in South Africa and in Malawi. And secondly, we aim to ensure that evidence is useful by conducting various systematic reviews. And since Neil so wonderfully explained what systematic reviews are, I need only remind you that it's a sum of the best available research on a specific question, and that's done by synthesizing several studies together. Systematic reviews are quite useful for answering questions of impact, which obviously could influence policy quite well. However, there are challenges in bridging the gap between researchers and policymakers, and this presentation just highlights four challenges that we've experienced as a centre and how our projects sort of seek to address those challenges. So, of course, I'm sure there are many more challenges, but the four I'll sort of touch on here are the availability of relevant summaries or reviews can be a challenge, raising awareness about the value of systematic reviews and developing the skills required to produce them, creating awareness and skills amongst decision makers to be able to make the most of the available evidence, and the lack of space to engage about systematic reviews, particularly in Africa. So with the first challenge, the availability of systematic reviews or summaries of a question of relevance, our approach in dealing with this challenge has been to expand our coverage of systematic reviews beyond development, to try and incorporate environmental systematic reviews. Here you can see a list of systematic reviews that we've been involved in. So two microfinance reviews, a smallholder farming review, urban agriculture, fair trade. And our members of our team are involved to varying degrees with either all or some of these systematic reviews. And some of them, like the urban agriculture review that Neil mentioned earlier in his talk today, are sort of at the intersection of development and environmental issues. The second challenge, building capacity of other researchers to do systematic reviews and raise awareness about the value of systematic reviews as research tools. We've been fortunate enough to join the Collaboration for Environmental Evidence, which is the main centre of which, the Centre for Evidence-Based Conservation, is based in Bangor, in Wales. And it's an international collaboration of practitioners and academics who aim to synthesize evidence of greatest environmental policy concern. The CEBC offers training courses on how to do systematic reviews, which could be very useful for other research teams hoping to get involved in this methodology. And CE Joburg, which is the sort of centre down in Johannesburg, down in Johannesburg. Bad, not a geographer, clearly. So we're busy conceptualizing how we can offer mentorship services to other researchers wanting to undertake a systematic review. We also undertook a priority setting exercise, the CE Joburg, with environmental NGOs and researchers and government, people from government, to try and get a better understanding of what are the questions of concern in the environmental sector from them. And we did this as a way to try and develop a framework of sort of possible future review questions, and as a way to sort of raise awareness about the value of systematic reviews for the environmental sector. The third challenge is enhancing the capacity of decision makers to make the most of available evidence, and this is where our UJB Cure project comes in. The UJB Cure project is a 3-year project funded by DFID, and it's an approach to tackle this challenge. It's led by Professor Ruth Stewart, whose work focuses on providing evidence for decision makers and supporting them to access and make sense of research. UJB Cure works with a number of other partners, both in South Africa and abroad, specializing in evidence-informed policy. These include the South African Cochrane Centre, the Centre for Evidence-Based Healthcare at Stellenbosch, and then abroad the International Initiative for Impact Evaluation and the Epicenter. As far as I'm aware, the evidence-informed policy team at CFAR is the only centre in South Africa that involves itself in systematic reviews outside of healthcare. UJB Cure works with the Malawian and South African governments, as I mentioned, in order to increase their use of evidence in decision-making. The program takes a mentorship-based approach as well, using practical workshops, mentorships, and secondments to build decision-makers' capacity for using research evidence. The final challenge I discuss here is the absence of a space to engage about systematic reviews in Africa. This is a challenge because systematic reviews are a tool to enhance evidence-informed policy. And our take on dealing with this challenge has really been for Ruth to develop the Africa Evidence Network, which is an online forum of both research producers and users in Africa and abroad. The AEN engages the wider community of evidence synthesis practice and users of evidence across Africa, and it's a forum for all African-based, but also those based abroad, African evidence users and producers to engage with debates and issues in evidence, inform policy and evidence synthesis. The activities of the AEN include an upcoming conference in November at the end of this month, as well as one in 2016. We also do a monthly newsletter where we have updates from the region and abroad in evidence synthesis and policy. And the aim with this is to really grow the community of evidence users and producers in Africa and really encourage discussion and debate between producers and users of evidence in Africa and abroad. So there are a number of ways in which, as conservationists, you can become involved, and that's one, by joining the AEN and letting your voice be heard or growing the network. Sorry, there's a bit of a typo there. You can also follow CE Joburg on Twitter and keep checking the website for updates on training or mentoring. And then follow environmentalevidence.org, which is the sort of overarching collaboration website for updates on completed or ongoing reviews. There's also a great library there. And there's also a really awesome forum on that website where you have the opportunity to inform priority questions for review teams. And then, of course, you could always uptake your own systematic review and a question of importance to you. So, as sort of in conclusion to a very short presentation, 2 questions. Are there approaches that you've used to increase the usefulness and use of evidence in your own work? And are there any issues in conservation where any of these approaches that I've mentioned above would be particularly valuable? Thanks very much.